I'd like to get the meeting started, please. If anyone take their seats. I need my gavel. All right. Could everyone please take their seats so we can begin the meeting? I see we have a quorum, so I call the meeting to order. Mr. Unks, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Okay, I'd like to first now call the Executive Committee meeting to order. Action is to approve the Executive Committee minutes from October 18th. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion and a second by Mr. Butler. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. I'd like to adjourn the Executive Committee meeting. Now, let me call to order again our board meeting. Before we get started into the meeting in itself, I have a little acknowledgement that I'd like to make if possible. Not if possible, we're going to do it. And thank you. And I'm so happy to see that the person we're acknowledging was able to get here on time. I hope your husband's okay. It gives me great pleasure to recognize and thank Commissioner Karen Seal for her dedication and service to the Pinellas County children and families while serving on the JWB board. Karen was first appointed to the board in 2002 as an ex officio member representing the Pinellas County Commission. Served 1 year in a term. At that time, she then was appointed again in 2010, where she has served us well since then. 12 years of service on our board, 4 executive directors or CEOs, and hundreds of thousands of Pinellas County children and families who have benefited from her leadership. Karen has been a champion for the underserved children and families and to ensure their basic needs were met for children's health and wellness issues, advocating in school-based health clinics, dental sealants, and children's mental health for childhood safety and promotion of safe sleep for babies and preventing needless deaths, and for community-led initiatives, shining a light and bringing services to underserved neighborhoods such as Coral Heights. She was on the forefront of the county's homeless leadership efforts and served on the Homeless Leadership Board, now known as the Homeless Leadership Alliance. She's an advocate for countywide administrative forums and lent her leadership to the Health and Human Service Leadership Board, where she served alongside others, governmental leaders, to convene around important issues impacting children and their families. Karen, on behalf of the JWB, we thank you. You are an extraordinary steward, and for your tireless service in making children a priority. We have a small token of appreciation, and if I can get it out of it, that we would like to give you. The plaque reads, Honor Karen Seal, Board Member, Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, 2002 to 2003 and 2010 to 2021. 12 years of dedicated service for Pinellas County children. Thank you, Karen. Would you like to say anything?
wow. Anyway, thank you. That was very, very, very kind. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to serve and to serve with so many dedicated people around this table. And it's through everybody's collective efforts, through the staff's efforts that, we do define and make a difference for our children. And they are our future, as we all know, and it really does matter that every day what we do, because we are changing lives. So I want to thank all of you because of your dedication and your caring and your leadership as well. And I'm very sorry to be leaving. I held on as long as I could because this is a coveted position amongst my other county commissioners. And so anyway, this year I know Commissioner Gerard will be a wonderful member of this board because of her background and because of her dedication towards children as well. So you will be well served by Commissioner Gerard. So thank you all, each and every one of you, for everything that you do. Thanks.
Once again, thank you, Commissioner, for all the hard work and all the service you've provided to the children of this community. It goes without saying, we'll be missed, but you will be remembered for all the great things that you've done. Thanks again. Let's move on to the consent items. If it's okay from a legal perspective, I'd like to do them all three at the same time. Okay. So we have to approve the minutes of the board meeting on November 4th, 2021. Also to accept the executive committee minutes from October 18th, 2021, and to accept the financial reports from October 2021.
Motion approval.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign. They're approved. Okay, let's move right on to the presentations. We have a discussion from Human Information Services Hub, Randy Russell, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Foundation for Healthy St. Pete. Could you please take the stand?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here. It is my privilege and honor to serve as the President and CEO of the Foundation for Healthy St. Petersburg. We're delighted to be with you this morning. The content of my comments relate to the 140,000 citizens in our county who live below poverty and their need to connect to much needed services and how those connections are occurring and where our gaps are. And this all started, the foundation itself fuels ideas that come from the community. And so both JWB and the county and 211 and we have been talking over the last several months, and I would indeed say years, over how best to consider the next step. There are counties, municipalities, areas all across the country who are doing a deeper job of penetrating those with needs and connecting them to services. And we believe our county can do more. I believe 211 has made it very clear what their services are and how they deliver those services. And they would also, I think, quickly agree, although Mickey will talk to you in a minute, about there are still so many more people with needs. So how do we scale this in a way that actually connects people to services and does so in a way that guarantees there is a connection? And that requires definitely more fuel, more money. But first, we have been asked and are doing, and just yesterday morning held our first convening over the Human Services Navigation Hub in our county. And this brought together everybody from Bay Care to folks who are looking to move a platform of connecting social services, a platform called Unite Us, which is a for-profit entity funded by the insurance companies. They're also out there enrolling providers in our county right now, as is Bay Care, using a system that's called Help First, which used to be known as Aunt Bertha. So those two systems are out there, but the comprehensive look here we're taking on is inclusive of those anchor assets in our community. The bigger question is, how do you take a person, and I'm a case manager by training and orientation and affect and every other way, so advocating for clients' needs is a natural state for me and for the foundation. So when you look at those 140,000, as far as JWB is concerned, about 80,000 of those people include children. And when you're thinking about that, and we're looking at the numbers of people who are actually seeking connection to services, we have a huge gap. And I would suggest that gap is also by race. And one of the things we are very clear about is this is not, one system does not fit all. Not everybody trusts the main system of referrals. Not everybody trusts or has a history of being able to receive the traditional, through the traditional services, the services they need. And through the first 5 years of the foundation, we've done a lot of listening, and we have over 14,000 individual voices. The number one, and 90% of those are people of color, the number one concern is we have no idea what services are out there. I think all of us would say we are a service-rich county. We have a lot of different services to offer. The needs are out there. The difference and the missing piece is the connection. So in detail, the Human Services Navigation Hub would have a single place to get triaged and then get assigned to the proper channel as one of the beginning imaginations. And then once that channel is initiated, whatever the service needs are, if it's a housing counseling agency appointment that somebody needs, then who's calling them on the day of and saying, today's your appointment, do you have transportation, did you get there, did you get what you need? Who's also engaging with providers. I have been a provider of a nonprofit organization in lots of different states and cities, and I will tell you, we don't have time to do all of the data reporting and enter into all of the systems that are necessary to keep a one database updated. It's not a healthy way to opt in or when you have free time, update those services. You have to pay for that. You have to pay people who actually keep those services updated so the navigators have a way to make this work. The Homeless Management Information System that has been in place in Pinellas does a great job for the homeless community. It's a similar model. So that any door you walk in, we know who you are and we know what the history is and we know how to hopefully help expedite the services you need. This is a preventive mood. It's not so much the care coordination, because once someone is in care, we know who you are. We can begin connecting you to services. So if you're in medical care or at a hospital or at a mental health facility, you've already connected. I'm worried about the 80% of the folks who are not connected, who have not accessed services, and that's what's going to require an extra lift. So when you think of Black, Indigenous people of color and the systems that poor people in general access, it's a pejorative model. There's somebody in power who has power over what's next for my life. It's a very vulnerable moment to be seeking services. That requires extra human touch and care, which is why we're venturing into this with a human services title. Yesterday's convening got a group of 35 people together. 85% of the folks on the call said, we need to do this and we need to keep moving forward. And 80% said this was the group to do it. So we are taking their counsel and doing what they're asking, which is for the foundation to continue facilitating this. Our timeline is we think it's going to, the method we're using is a human engineering one, which means we are doing a lot of listening to users of the system and people who need services who don't use the current systems. And what system would you like to use to stand up? This is a bit of a research and development kind of effort, a go, no go kind of an arrangement so that as we learn, we can alter and design the system. I think that will take about a year. Within 6 months, I think the how we're weaving together the services that are already in place and the organizations that are already in place doing good work, I think there's lots of ways to scale those services up and connect them together. I don't think this is a replace or a bait and switch in any way. It's taking the assets we're using and building it broader. So when you think about that for our county, it is a preventive measure when you think about ER visits, when you think about crime, when you think about ability to go to school with a healthy mind. And when you think about the very thing, the quality of life that people need, we have to hear from the people who need the services in order to know how to connect them. And that's going to be our number one driver. Orlando Health is a partner to the foundation. As you know, we were born out of a hospital sale, and Orlando Health's purchase of Bayfront has also come with some additional resources, and they're putting $750,000 immediately into this Human Services Navigation Hub. We're putting $250,000 in, so we have $1 million to start this imagination. And the foundation is also committed to raising dollars in new revenue models. We cannot sustain this program with the existing revenue models, so that's going to be one of the lines we have to look at. Who else has an interest in supporting this navigation system? It is going to cost more. I don't want to hide that. But people with services need the services, and we want to find the way to pay for it that makes sense within the system we have and to build the assets together we have. So with that, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to our process. We started again yesterday, vast majority saying moving forward. The representatives on the call included leaders of various systems across the county, from law enforcement to education to hospitals. So we had a wide network. There's many more we need to add. We're not done with that yet. They are forming work groups, and those work groups are going to start working on things like the listening. What do we want to ask? Who do we want to know? How do we take that data? The next piece is going to be looking at various systems. And as we know, the Help First model is already in place at Bay Care, so they want to do a deep dive with us and explain how that model works. Maybe that's the best model to scale up. Let's pay attention. So I think we have a lot more research to do before we have an answer. But the foundation, our board, and our energy is really dedicated on this as a big system fix for our county. With that said, if you have any questions, please let me know.
I have one quick follow-up question. You talked about the folks that were on the call yesterday. Any relations with or any assistance from the judicial? Okay, because I heard law enforcement, I heard education, I heard
Yes.
healthcare.
Yeah, Sarah Muller was unable to be on the call yesterday, but she's very plugged in, so, yeah. There you are. Okay, nice to meet you. So I haven't seen anybody in person in a while, so yes, good.
Any other comments or questions? I see none. Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll look forward to hearing more about it as you go forward. All right, let's move on to an update for 211 Tampa Bay Cares. Mickey, are you starting, or whomever might start?
Actually, with your permission, I'd like to start.
Yes, you may.
I'm Sally Parks, and I've sat in your shoes or sat in your seats, I should say, because I think of fond times that I served on the Juvenile Welfare Board back in the day. I'm here as the immediate past president or chairman of the board of 211 Tampa Bay Cares. And I want you to know that we have almost all of our board members here in the building somewhere. I think a couple of them are on virtually. So we have a very engaged board and very involved over the years. Certainly anything that we're going to talk about today, by the way, has not been new news to us. This has been something that we've been dealing with for years and continue to try to be a problem-solving organization. I know that our mission is the same in so many ways. We care about kids and families, and we want to be as effective as we can. So as of now, I'd like to introduce our chairman of the board, Steve Halshek. Steve, start coming up here because he's the one that's going to be the primary person to make a presentation. Steve has a financial background, which is, of course, invaluable, and he is vice president of America Momentum Bank, and we're glad to have him as our chair. He's taken a really strong lead and a position of understanding what the issues are that we're dealing with. Thank you very much for the opportunity to say hello to you, and now I'll introduce Stephen with a much
Stephen,
taller microphone.
Just one thing before you begin, I want to recognize that we have Lourdes Benedict here from the county as well, so I apologize for not recognizing you before. Go ahead, Stephen.
Well, good morning and happy holidays to everyone in the room. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak today. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. I do want to echo Sally's comments that, 211 and JWB do share the common goal of helping the children of Pinellas County, and it's something that we take seriously, most certainly here at the board level. And so I'd like to go ahead and get started with the presentation, and again, appreciate your time. Next slide, please. So 211 Tampa Bay Cares mission is improving lives through the power of information and hope. And the vision is a more compassionate community by connecting knowledge to needs. And that's something that we focus on daily in our call center and every time that our board gets together and has a conversation. Our board of directors, as you can see here, I cannot thank our board enough for the work that they've done this year. We've got a very, very dedicated team. that always brings innovative ideas and ways to improve our organization and focus on the things that matter. So thank you to each of you. I'd also like to thank our partners. As you can see, we work with several institutions here in Pinellas County, and without them, we would not be able to do the work that we do. And now I'd like to move into some of the accomplishments that we've had this year, and also some, my apologies, some items that, you know, we need to improve on as well. So in the pandemic that affected everyone, we were in charge of executing the largest financial assistance distribution program for rent and utilities in Pinellas County. So in 8 months, we were able to distribute over $24 million to 8,400 Pinellas households, and $9.8 million was distributed to over 3,100 households with minor children. Big thank you to Pinellas County for entrusting us with that, and to JWB and the Foundation for Healthy St. Pete for supporting us in that initiative. Some of the accomplishments that continued, we were awarded 2 community awards, one for the Family Friendly Business Award and one for the Intercultural Advocacy Institute Amigo Award. Those were 2 very nice marks that we were very happy to receive. And as we all know, we were on a corrective action plan this year as well, so I'd like to highlight some of the accomplishments we had and some areas where we certainly want to improve. So contract target service levels. We were tasked with 7,135 unique families served. 211 Tampa Bay Cares achieved 7,803 unique families served, which was 109% of goal. We also had a contract objective of 85% customer satisfaction rating for all FSI calls. We achieved 93%, met 109% of goal. Very, very proud of that. Another objective was the average speed of answer to be no greater than 15 minutes each month for the regular FSI team. So October through December, the CARES Act was operational, and during that time, the high was 18 minutes and 52 seconds in the month of October, with a low of 15 minutes and 54 seconds in the month of December. In 2021, from January to present, our high was 6 minutes and 38 seconds, with a low of 1 minute and 11 seconds. So definitely a big improvement there. And on the next slide, it's just a chart to show the improvement and the average speed of answer. The next expectation was to answer a minimum of 3,500 calls per month by the daytime FSI team. So while the CARES program was operational, we received over 3,500 calls per month. In October, we had over 5,922, November 5,897, and in December, 4,441. January through November, 211 had not received over 3,500 calls a month. And again, this is dictated by this graph here. We do have 3 full-time FSI employees that are currently in training and 3 that we have openings for. Our next training is scheduled for January 17th, 2022. Hope to get those folks operational so that we can continue to focus on call times and abandonment. The next action item was if call volume was less than 3,500 calls per month for the FSI team, 211 would have a 0% abandonment rate. We did not hit that metric and averaged a 15% abandonment rate for those months receiving less than 3,500 calls, with a low of 5% in March and a high of 24% in October. January through October, 50% of the months were below 10% abandonment rate. And again, we have a chart here showing those and highlighting the roles that we have in training and the ones that are open, and 15% average for the calendar year. In regards to abandonment rate, we thought it would be helpful to show some statistics. So AIRS, AAS, and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline do not have industry standards for abandonment rates. International Customer Management Institute shows a 15% average. Healthcare Financial Management Association suggests 15% with established standards for healthcare clients. And Voxco standard is 10%, but recent studies note that on the case of mobile, call abandonment rate can be as high as 20%. Just to kind of show what is going on in other areas. Providers shall maintain agency-established staff turnover goals of less than 19%. So our original goal was set in January 2021 based on past performance and industry trends. So our turnover rate for 2020 was 21%, And for January 2021 through November 2021, it was 30%. And the big challenge was the Great Recession that we're all facing. As a lender for a bank, I deal with a multitude of clients, and I cannot tell you one that is not experiencing challenges with the labor force. Something that we've very, very much focused on, and Rebecca, who runs our HR, has been intricate in helping with incentives for employees, training our employees, and doing what we can to retain that talent that we have. Just to highlight some industry standards in regards to turnover rate. So in 2021, the Bureau of Labor Statistics report shows a 57.3 overall turnover rate. The Quality Assurance and Training Connection shows an average of 30 to 45% in the call center industry. And the retention strategies for 2022 guide shows 61% of companies are having challenges keeping employees. It's an incredible statistic. 73% are actively thinking about quitting their jobs. And in August, the highest recorded quit rate ever recorded by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So with those stats, I'd like to pass the mic over to Mickey to talk a little bit about what we're doing in our organization now to help with our deficiencies and some things that we are looking forward to in the future to continue to improve and move forward. And once again, just want to thank each of you for your partnership with 211 and all you do to support us.
Shannon, we're going to stay on this slide, so you won't have to, even if you see me flipping, we're going to stay on this one. Thank you so much. Thank you, Stephen. Mickey Thompson. I am honored to be the President and CEO of 201 Tampa Bay Cares, and wanted to share a little bit about our organization. We are very solutions focused, always looking at problem solving. How can we do better? And so these are some of the areas that I wanted to highlight of what we've been doing all year long. And before this, our people and culture, as Stephen mentioned, Rebecca Armacost, our VP of People and Culture, we hired before we were put on the corrective action plan in October. We knew we were going into a time of we really need to focus on our people, retention, and recruitment for employees. Had no idea at that time the extent, as which I think most businesses, of the Great Resignation and what's going on right now in the workforce of trying to recruit people. So we've done a lot in our staffing, people, and culture area. We've bolstered our infrastructure. Like I said, we hired our VP of People and Culture. We've instituted an electronic HR management system. A lot of it was in paper before, so now we can really pull data much quicker and see where how fast it's taking us to fill positions to allow us to figure out, do we need to make trainings to some of our, tweaks to our onboarding of staff and recruitment processes that we have. We also created in January a people strategy plan. In addition to our strategic plan, we have a people strategy plan, and those goals were to attract the right talent to drive our mission, utilize workforce planning and analytics to meet our future resource needs, and promote and retain our most talented staff. We also recently transitioned our part-time 30-hour executive business office assistant into an HR business partner to really help bolster recruitment and screening efforts for our organization. We've done a lot with recruitment. We've actually, as you saw, starting in July, we had more openings. We did have a couple staff that did go out on maternity leave. Were out for 6 weeks and then decided they need to stay home. They could not find infant child care to be able to return to the workforce. So we had a little bit of a magnifying of our open positions because of some of those items, some of those situations. We had to hire 2 staffing firms. We've always worked with Hiergy for a long period of time, but by the time they got to the summer and all the businesses they were working at, they ran out of candidates to send to people. So we hired a second in addition. So we have 2 right now, staffing companies that are also assisting in recruiting folks, because it is highly competitive out in the community to recruit people. So we have Hiergy and Randstad for that. We're also working with the universities. We've advertised in Handshake, which includes St. Pete College, and also been in discussions, did a presentation for St. Pete College for their students to, ask them about, provide them the opportunity to apply for 201 Tampa Bay Cares. We've done Join Our Team rack cards. We sent those out to the entire faith community as well. To give you an idea of the numbers, so we did 1,000 resumes that we have screened for positions. And as time goes on through the process of interviewing, so 447 met qualifications out of that 1,000 that we received. We did 160 phone screens, 81 followed through on the phone screen. So we may have scheduled it, but they didn't show up for the phone screen. We also had 58 interviews. 27 we offered positions to out of that group. And they would get through the background screen, the drug test and all that. And then when the day started for them to start, they were no-shows for many of them because they had been recruited by another group that maybe had an incentive of education of $5,000 a year for an incentive for that. Also for retention, obviously we want to keep the folks that we have. We've done 17 internal promotions since November of 2020. We've done added provider in-services where our staff get online. We invite providers to come in and educate us a little bit more on the services that they provide. We provide quarterly professional development and ongoing trainings for staff. We've held 10 new group trainings for employees at our organization. We've provided equipment for them, laptops, monitors, cell phones, headsets, so they can work. We've changed their schedule to be flexible. There's 2 days in and 3 days out remote. It used to be all 100% in-house. And so we provided them that equipment to be remote. We've also provided reflective supervision. Again, thank you to JWB for offering that. That was paid for multiple agencies to participate in, to be able to be there for our staff who are on the lines dealing with a lot of very crisis-oriented phone calls. Retention also, we've done a lot of employee activities, a Threshers game, Welcome Back to the Office Week, daily luncheons, National 2-in-1 celebrations, celebrating our veterans who work for us in November, and monthly town halls, and as well as I said, flexibility with our scheduling. We've also been focused on improving our service delivery activities, which is really around client experience and high-quality standards-based services we're continue to be committed to. Client experience, this last year, in addition to everything else going on with the pandemic, our accreditations for both the Alliance of Information Referral Systems and the American Association of Suicidology came up. They come up once every 5 years. We had to do them both at the same time. We've received those again, AIRS, that's the 4th time. In Florida statute, it does require that 2-in-1 organizations be accredited by AIRS to ensure that we are providing standards-based and high-quality services. They do monitor our calls, as well as review all our policies and our systems at our organization. Modernization, we've been very focused. I want to also thank the Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, who's become a newer partner for our organization, helped provide over $100,000 to upgrade our core IT network, as well as our phone system for upgrading our performance and management, for our supervisors to be able to do a better job without doing it by hand of the performance and supervision of our team for our organization. So we've had a lot of infrastructure, again, that's been supported by Central Florida Behavioral Health Network. They've also, through the governor this last year, did approve appropriation for 2-in-1, $3 million statewide. Each 2-in-1 got $250,000. That contract was just signed, and so we are going to start recruiting staff for that as well. They'll be added to our crisis line services. Right now, they will not be added to the FSI team due to we may want to talk about some of our contracting and how we're budgeted to be able to maybe have some of that staff assist there as well. We're also recommending hiring potentially an independent industry consultant to really focus on performance metrics, abandonment, wait time, and staffing levels to set those standards. As we said, there's nothing in our industries that have what that standard would be. Many times how we're funded, each entity has a different expectation of what is appropriate for a wait time or abandonment rate and a staffing level. We may as an organization have an idea, but there's multitudes. So really having an independent group kind of look at our unique situation for 2-in-1 and how we're funded and make recommendations of what those abandonment wait times and staffing levels should be. I also added just right before I turned this in, the vacancy study in the Pinellas nonprofit sector. I will tell you, it's just not about 2-in-1. This is about the whole nonprofit sector. And it's really becoming disruptive to how people are accessing services, to Randy's point. We are getting calls back, and I'm not saying any agency names or anything, but they're saying their caseworker is not calling them back. They have no one to contact. And that's probably because there's turnover at that organization. And so connecting people and getting them access, we do get a lot of backflow into 211 because of those access issues. In addition to the pandemic and having to close certain shelters or access to those, we have that going on. And I want to say, I did see on the Central Florida, the Children's Mental Health Initiative agenda that was added. And I was like, I definitely want to highlight that because I do think that's so critical. I know in our mental health meetings, behavioral health, they are saying that to get an appointment, it takes almost 3 weeks sometimes for those families who are in a mental health crisis. And that's because, and everyone is saying, we don't have staff. We're trying to fill those positions. And so I think it's, again, yes, 201, we've had our vacancy and we're working on that. But I think for access for the system of a whole and for families with minor children in our community, that is really important. Last two things really quick, our contract reimbursement structure. We'd love to have a conversation about how to change our reimbursement structure for paying for FSI services. Right now, it's reimbursed by individual position. And so it may be helpful to change to a unit cost because the individual positions we have to in our phone system, which I know every family and many agencies complain about our entry queue to 211, we have to ensure that how we're funded right now, that those calls coming in, they have to say, press 1 if you have a minor children at home, press 2 if you don't. We have to do that so we can ensure that only family calls with minor children get to the FSI staff that are funded. If we were able to do a unit cost, we could have some flexibility and maybe clean up that entry queue to help families not have to go through, they're already in crisis, and to help not have to go through that. Right now, we do need to keep that in place to ensure that we are ensuring that calls from families with minor children get to that specific teams that's funded by JWB. Last but not least, community partnerships. Like I mentioned, we do have expanding partnership with Central Florida Behavioral Health Network. We've also just recently heard Duke Energy is working with United Way Worldwide and working with 2-in-1s, small dollars at this moment in the big scheme. However, to have that partnership with Duke Energy and 2-in-1s is also exciting for our organization, as well as Sally and I spent some time up in Tallahassee, early couple days, traipsing the halls in Tallahassee, advocating for additional funding for 2-in-1, as well as a special program regarding seniors for our program as well. So with that, we are always looking for positive community partnerships, and so we continue to do that. It's not something I want you to know, we don't just sit and go, we have enough funding, we're good. We're always actively seeking new partnerships and how we can serve the community better. So I think that's it. Next slide. Any questions for both Steve and I? Yes.
Yeah, first off, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate all of you being here, the board. This is the kind of interaction that I think is really helpful for me anyway, because obviously, as Commissioner Parks said, this is something that we've been struggling with for a while. And so, I've been hearing kind of different perspectives from the contract side. But again, it's really good for you all to be here. First off, you have an amazing board. I mean, you're blessed with some brilliant people who've dedicated their lives to the community. There's not one person in this room who doesn't want 211 to be successful. And the last thing I want is for us to somehow have to take money away from 211. So I don't think anybody wants us to get to that point. Having said that, I didn't want to take money away from RCS. My wife volunteers for RCS, my church does a lot of stuff with RCS, but they didn't give me a choice. So I'm really glad that you guys are here, trying to help give us a choice to keep working with you. One of the things you said that was interesting to me is that you have different sources of funding that have different expectations. And you also have, I think, different sources of funding that are expecting you to do different things. So for example, we have you doing FSI. Does the county have you doing other programs? Or, how, can you just maybe give me a better understanding of internally how you guys are structured as it relates to your different funding sources and the different expectations you have and then the different areas that you're doing for different funders?
Certainly. So just in general, funding sources in general, obviously, every funding board wants to have a direct impact and is, channeling dollars to, a lot of them are very targeted to specific populations and serving. There's not a lot of general, 2-in-1 to serve anyone who calls about anything, who needs help to get them connected to the social service network. Pinellas County funds us, there's two, actually multiple contracts, 3 of them, different. So we have a general contract for about $400,000 for general call center staffing. And so we have them answering our crisis calls that come in, as well as information referral calls from adults without minor children that gets routed to that particular team. They also fund a separate financial assistance program because the vast majority of calls that come into 2-in-1 are about housing, rent, and utility. And on top of all this, our employees, not only our clients, but the employees are dealing with escalating rents here in Pinellas County, and to be able to be sustainable here in our community. So we have a special program for the Adult Emergency Financial Assistance Program that has 4 staff that help answer that line, and 1 supervisor. And we actually, when you press adults with out minor children, they're given a choice for, are you needing rent and utility assistance? And we just send all the rent and utility to that team to be screened so that they can get access to financial assistance, because there's not a lot about with that. We also do a lot of specialty contracts that kind of backfill some of those areas, or organizations that reach out to us. We partner with Suncoast Centers. We actually answer their sexual assault hotline for Pinellas County here. And so that's how some of the evening staff, it's a monthly contract that we have, again, not tied to a position, so we can answer those calls in the evenings for our service. So it's really, there's a bunch. Central Florida will be adding some texting staff because people are texting us as well. We need bolstering there instead of have staff answer the phone and have to do texting. We're pulling the texting off to have those folks. So it's really hard. We had a visit from 911 and they said, wow, how do you do this? It's like a puzzle of funding and being able to make sure the right people are actually funding or answering the call and being true to those contracts. Now the metrics, yes, JWB is the only contract we have now that has performance metrics around abandonment rates and wait times. Doesn't mean that those other groups don't monitor it. We meet monthly with the county, and we share all that data with them every month, and we talk about it. Talk about how many vacancies we have as well, but that's not in the contracts for those. It's an ongoing discussion that we have. Do we need to add more people about what's going on in the community? So I know that's a long answer. I apologize.
No, I
but
appreciate it, yeah.
It's a fabric of support for our organization.
Yeah, I was just trying to get an idea for myself because I'm not familiar with how you work internally, how that is set up now, because obviously it seems like there may be a better way to do it, including, on our end, but I don't have that answer today. So I did want to ask Lourdes from the county, not to put you on the spot, but if you wouldn't mind, I have a quick question. Thank you.
Actually, I was here for the Randy presentation. It's fine.
Sorry.
I'm here, it's fine.
So from the county's perspective, Mickey just said that there aren't, the contract with the county doesn't have the abandonment issue, wait times, things like that. From the, we've had the 211 on a corrective action plan for a while now. From the county's perspective, is 211 are they on a corrective action plan from the county's perspective? Are they underperforming? What is the county's perspective and on either the status of the contract, and is that funding in jeopardy? What are you looking for?
Sure, if I can step back and just answer before that, I think that's important. So Mickey described the different programs that we have with 211, the homeless front door, the information and referral crisis line, the adult emergency financial assistance program. It's been about 6 years now, as well as rapid rehousing. So we have all of that. We do have different measures that we look at with them. And I got to tell you, they don't always hit the mark, okay? I've worked with Mickey for a very long time. We've had some honest, frank conversations about that, very transparent, very willing to share. So there are improvements that are needed, okay? But I do want to say that during hurricane season, during flooding seasons, the first person that I could always pick up the phone and always says yes. And sometimes we stumble, sometimes we have to add our own staff to help, right, to get the job done. We do that. So then comes COVID, okay, which you all know what that's been like. And we were given $24 million of CARES funding to get that out, get it out quickly. Our community was suffering. Again, who do I call? Mickey, need your help with this. Can we do this? Knowing that everything wasn't modernized, everything wasn't perfect, but within a matter of days, not weeks, not months, not years, we brought that program up and put out the $24 million. Again, I will say that it wasn't easy. We had daily calls. I'm the assistant county administrator. I was on those daily calls. Okay, that's the type of work with Mickey, through the weekends, at night, whatever it took to get it done. And through that, we found that there's some things that we need to streamline better, make changes on the fly to get this money out to people, and we did, and it was very successful. But through that process, we had some lessons that we learned, that we need to modernize more. For example, one of the things to train somebody, it took several weeks. We didn't have time for that. We didn't have that luxury. So those are things that we need to continue to work on. Beth did call me early on during all of that. She described the corrective action plan that you all were considering or working on with JWB. At that time, I said, no, this is not the right time. I mean, everyone is just out there in the trenches getting this CARES funding done. And now I feel like it is the time. Had a good conversation with Mickey. She was very open to suggestions, to looking at how we can modernize better. Then we came together with JWB, the foundation, Randy, and now we're looking at what can we do better as a community, because we need to do better. So I hope that answers your question.
Do you have any kind of time frame that you've developed?
That's the one that Randy described. We're in this together. Again, JWB, the county, and the foundation had our first meeting yesterday, especially now that the pandemic has quieted down, thank goodness. So that's our next step. And also a part of all of that, the county has put out an RFP for a coordinated access model for behavioral health. We chose to do that first, and I do believe strongly, and I hope that at some point it's going to connect with 211 or whoever we're working with for information referral for our residents. That just closed yesterday. So during the pandemic, we've been doing all of this at the same time. Nothing really has slowed down, to be honest.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I
Judge
have a
Moore?
question. It's for Mickey. The conversations that we're having, we had pre-COVID. And Mickey, I want to thank you because you were at a board meeting, and I was one of the only people on here that could tell you, I called that line, and I couldn't get through. But you gave me your number, and for my clients, you shouldn't have to do what you did, but you did it for my clients because of the system. And this was way pre-pandemic. So now the pandemic comes in, and like you said, now my clients are dealing with no case managers. You are their only hope in town. So what do I tell those families right now? Because I have an agency that I'm dealing with over 900 people with 9 case managers. So they're not going to get any real referral. And the referrals that they get say call 211. So I'm giving them that oral referral. But then when they're in the system and the statute says get to permanency in 1 year, the statute doesn't say, but if a pandemic, but if there are no employees, but if the system is slow. So if you could give me some hope, because like, Mr. Unk said, I don't want there to be a loss of money because you are the only hope for a lot of our clients. And so I don't know what a good timeline is, but I don't know what to tell my people. And I get the phone calls. My phone starts ringing at 7 o'clock because they know I get there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so I don't know what it is to do. But if you could give me some hope to give to the people that I deal with, they're about to lose their kids, I would love it.
Well, again, as I recommended, we really need to look at the turnover and the impact that is happening across the whole network. 201 Tampa Bay Cares cannot do it alone. I've always been honest. Martha calls me habitually honest, and I get myself in trouble for being so honest. But I think that's the case. You know, 2-1, taking on turnover rate in the child protection system, we are not funded for that. We did not get state funding till just signing November. So to add additional staff, and we are advocating, Sally and I in Tallahassee, for that. So I can tell you, again, for if anyone, again, we are willing to look up any call, we record our calls. If there are complaints, if somebody can't get through, you can always, I do put my number out. I carry my cell phone 24 hours a day, and I never turn it off and haven't in all the years that I have been the CEO. You can call me, leave a message, say, hey, I need help. We'll make sure we can reach out to those. But to be able to stand here and say, to give you hope that we can step in and help also with the responding, because the child protection system is having trouble with staff turnover as well. I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if I can commit to that as an organization, but I am committed to always being here to help in any way that we can. As Lorna said, we're always there to step up and say, yes, how can we help? It's just really difficult right now. That staff turnover across the human service sector, I believe, is really having a tremendous impact, again, onto Randy's point, those 140,000. They couldn't get help before. I mean, it was struggling before. Imagine now with that turnover, ripple effect in the human service system. So that's my honest answer.
Yeah, I have to, yes, I am. I have to echo Judge Moore's comments, because the only thing I can go on, to be honest, sitting here, is I've recommended 7 or 8 people in the last year to 211, and I have a 0, and I mean 0, effectiveness for those people that I referred. And the latest one was about 2 weeks ago. So I sit there and I'm like, how much is your budget every year?
So to share a little bit about some of the calls that are coming into the Family Services Initiative team that we have.
No, I'm actually asking you, how much money do you receive on an annual basis from all parties?
$1.2 million.
1.2. All sources.
All sources. Without the direct client assistant, it's $3.2 million.
3.2 million. How many employees do you have?
We have 46 employees.
46 employees, and that's 24 hours a day.
And that does include part-time employees, so that's not full-time equivalents.
Approximately how many part-time?
We have about 8 part-time employees.
8. How many volunteers do you have?
For our call center, we do not have any who are answering inbound calls.
Ooh.
Because those calls coming in, I do want to be clear. Right now, we're in a situation with a housing in our community that a mother with 2 children is calling in, yes, for housing and shelter, but she's also threatening to kill herself and her 2 children because she cannot find housing.
Yeah, but you do training for your call takers.
Correct, but we do not have volunteers at this time.
And you could train volunteers the same way.
We
So
do
you
not
don't
have
have
volunteers at
any
this time.
volunteers trying to help you at all?
We do have volunteers who do help us doing follow-up calls
Yeah.
to callers. Some of our seniors and most vulnerable, we have that. We do have Duke Energy as well as Allstate Insurance that come out and do that.
Person I had call was on senior citizens' problems, and they couldn't even get through. They went through your whole list of what you offer, but senior citizens seem to be vacant of that. And when they tried to push the other button, they must have been one of your abandoned rates, because they couldn't get through. Now, the other question I have is, if the gentleman before you seems like we're all going to partner up and make this thing better, okay? Now, is this, the name of it is St. Pete Foundation? Is that just for residents in St. Pete, or am I wrong?
No, that happens to be our name, but we cover the county of Pinellas.
Okay, well, that's good, that's good. So you all are going to get together and make this thing a positive and something that we can all be proud of for $3.2 million?
No,
No.
we can do it for 6.
You do it for $6 million?
Yeah,
Okay.
because you know, what you have now is what you have, right? And that's not that's not reaching the people we're not reaching yet,
Okay.
right? So in order to do a better job, it's going to take more resource, period. That's just plain honesty.
Okay,
because
can
we
you
need-
provide us with what you need for that 6 million that's
Sure.
over and beyond the 3.2?
Absolutely. This is a formation process for the whole community. The first step is asking people who are not accessing help, what do you need to access help? What system would work for you? How can we connect you to services? And learning from those people is human design. We're going to learn from them what they want to connect to services, and then we're going to put that together and propose it. And I think there's funders, I'm also talking to funders along the way who are interested.
How many volunteers do you have?
We don't have any volunteers. We're a foundation and we're a funder.
Yeah, that's sad, because there's a lot of people out there looking for opportunities to volunteer for different nonprofits.
Yeah, we connect people to volunteer opportunities. We're just not an organization that provides services, so there's no volunteer opportunity.
Okay,
We
let's
fund
talk about
organizations that do.
payroll. Your typical person on the telephone that's answering calls, what do they make an hour?
So right now, we do just to let you know, we do an annual market salary survey, and we gear to have 80% of the market. That last study was the beginning of 2021, so it was using 2020 data. We will be doing another one. They start at $17.78 an hour.
Okay. Is that a
I
full-time
anticipate
position?
that will be increasing.
That's a full-time, not part-time position?
Correct. Well, they all make that $17.78 an hour. Full-time folks who are 30 hours and above do qualify for benefits in our organization. We also offer a retirement contribution from the organization to those employees. It's not a matching program. There's also a contribution on top of that. And health and medical, dental.
How long has the organization been in existence? How many years?
So actually, the helpline has been, this year is celebrating its 50th anniversary. This was an original program of Family Resources.
Right.
And then it spun off from Family Resources because they wanted to focus only on children and families, spun it off into an organization to serve the entire community.
If I've worked there 8 years, what would I be making an hour?
We have done some market increases over the years. The highest, I would say, is $21, $22 an hour for those direct service staff.
Do you have any type of retirement benefits?
Yes, like I said, well, the board has voted to have a contribution of 3% for folks' retirement. It's a contribution. It's done annually at the end of the year. And for those employees, I think it's over 1,000 hours that they earn.
Do you have an exit interview when people leave?
Yes, we do.
And how has that been turning out?
So I brought that along with me
Oh, you
as well.
brought them? That's awesome.
Actually, it's in the other room, and I apologize for that. The vast majority of them over this last year, some were about increasing more money at other organizations. In fact, the Homeless Leadership Alliance has 2 of our staff who moved into higher supervisory positions. So our staff were good enough to be hired into supervisory positions at those other organizations. Infant childcare, those who had children, really difficult finding infant childcare, and so they've chosen to resign from the workforce to take care of their children because of
could've
that.
called JWB
We also
for
had
that.
another employee leave because they were taking care of their elderly parents and needed to do that instead of work for us. We had 2 retirements. And I will say it's come up in some of the interviews, and I've actually talked to some of those employees myself. The compassion fatigue is real for our staff who are on the line. As you say, everyone's sending people to 2-in-1 and having 2-in-1 be the ones that are supposed to help solve all the access challenges in the system. Some are leaving because they said it's just too stressful to be handling. I had some caseworkers who were in the field for casework and then came to 2-in-1 because they thought it would be easier and said it was not. They're used to dealing with, 10 clients in a month, whereas at 2-in-1, you serve at least 20 different people a day, and you hear, they don't call 2-in-1 on a good day. It's always a bad day when they call 2-in-1.
Let me ask you about the gorilla in the room, affordable housing. How do you
Yes.
deal with that?
How do we deal with what?
Affordable housing.
So
Every
that is
elected person's nightmare.
Yes, and it is also magnifying, not just for our clients, families in the field, but the employees who are working here. I have one employee that reported the last meeting when I had an open focus session that their rent just was increased 60% for their rent. So as an organization, I'm trying to figure out how best to, and with our board, how do you follow the escalating rents in, pay for staff to ensure that they can, remain here and serve in our community. And I think that is not just, again, I don't think 211's alone in that, but for families with minor children, there is nowhere. There's very limited, almost zero, places for those families to go. They were not eligible for rapid rehousing screening when they called 211 because there was no place to send them to get them screened. So I do want to give a huge shout out to Amy Foster, the Homeless Leadership Alliance, who we sat and talked a great deal about this gap. And we are just now coming online, the Homeless Leadership Alliance Providers Council approved it's not the best, and Amy admits it as well, and it's not going to have tons of appointments, but we're going to start scheduling some appointments for families with minor children to be screened. And yes, they may be on a list a while, but at least they got on the list to be pulled off eventually for rapid rehousing programs. That was not in existence at all in this community until now. And so really huge shout out to Amy Foster for helping to coordinate that and work together with us, because we kept saying there's this huge need. And I'm glad we're able to finally get at least a little bit of movement in that area.
Have you reached out to private type of developers that are building these apartments and seen what their affordability rate was for their units?
I have not.
I mean, we approve these things with specifications that 30% will be at 80% poverty level. And I don't think we're utilizing that much at all. And I'm sure they're not in the social service business. So, I mean, it's like, don't you think that there might be a possibility to check with them, since we have this unbelievable number of apartments being built in this community right now? Would that be a good source, you think?
Certainly that would be. I will say the eligibility guidelines for FSI navigators is, certainly, and I'm not debating this, is set by JWB, and there's income guidelines for that. And we meet. We've met in years past. This program's been almost 10 years old. Every Friday, every week. For many years, it's now every other week. And we talk about those eligibility guidelines. I know our staff, our contact center manager and our supervisor for FSI participate in that, and are talking about that's the calls we're getting, and they aren't right now eligible for FSI based on the current eligibility screening. So in fact, only, I think it's 10% qualify of the calls that we get for Families Services Initiative actually meet the eligibility and have housing in hand already to be able to pass them on to a navigator.
Okay, also, at any given moment, like right now, how many operators do you have available or on?
So for the FSI team, specifically for families with minor
No,
children?
just overall, just the whole, across the board.
I have about 15 during the day in total as of today. That I'm including, I'm not adding the additional 3 open FSI positions that we have. That's during the day. Then our evening and weekend shifts are double covered.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have.
That's
I
what
hope
you had?
covered
I
it.
was
Yeah.
wondering if you were going to stop. Do we have any other, Susan? I think you had one, and then
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for coming, and the board. And I've been around a long time. I was a board member for 211 in the early 2000s. I've been on this board since 2015. It's been said a couple of times, you being here today is really not about the pandemic. This is about many, many years of questioning as our board is here protecting our taxpayer dollars and our contracts. So I realize today we have 2 issues. We have that balcony seat issue with Randy Russell and looking at system changes. But we're also looking at the contract that we have with 211. And I guess in my history of being a board member and being a board member here, I remember being on the board of 211 concerned and spoke those concerns that the system that was being built was not going to be able to handle the need in Pinellas County. And that's going back to 2000. And so when we sit at this board for the many years I have, we have had 211 in front of us, and probably the hardest peppering that you've had has been from Bernie McCabe and Bob Dillinger. Tough questioning of our CEO, whoever sat at that seat, and said, something is not right. And so I guess I respectfully want to say it hasn't been right for a while. So we need to address the contract that we have. And for us as board members, we represent our taxpayers, and the contract has deliverables that aren't being met. And in a few moments, I'm going to ask Beth, you or your representative, to give us a summary of that corrective action plan for the last 6 or 7 months. The last time 211 was here, I happened to be chair, and when we hired Beth, one of the board's encouragements to Beth was to get underneath 211 and find out what can we do, because we can't keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. So I'm going to, look to Beth to say she was given that directive. This isn't just Beth who's been doing all the research and trying to get us as a board the information we need to look at this contract. I remember discussing with Beth, I did my own research and found out nationwide there are privatizing call centers, and I'm sure y'all know this. This is nothing that Susan Ralston found. But the point is, there are a lot of different ways to look at a system to accomplish the goal. And these private call centers work for governments, work for nonprofits, work for cities, work for counties. And so, again, we have been discussing this among the board at this table. But again, I want to thank you, but I do want now to ask Beth, it's time now for Beth or your staff to talk to us about the corrective action plan and what you have found before we can take this conversation further. Thank you.
Linda, who knows it much better than I.
All right. On November 11th, 2020, JWB did put 211 on a corrective action plan due to some performance concerns. Number one, unacceptable average speed of answer, which is really wait time, and abandonment rate for incoming calls that dated back to at least October 2019. Staff turnover. Of course, as Mickey's been saying, that impacts their ability to answer all the calls if they don't have sufficient staff on the call center. And then finally was 211, during COVID Cares, utilized some JWB-funded program staff to assist with that program, and there was some confusion, miscommunication. They really didn't seek permission to do that. When we made them aware of that, they ceased and desisted immediately. So that was resolved promptly. On May 1st, so in November we said, with respect to the unacceptable average speed of answer and abandonment calls, we asked for them to give us a mutually agreed upon performance measures for improving their call handling. And then once they had established those, to demonstrate achievement for the next 5 months. So on May 1st, they revised their performance measures to include a metric for answering a minimum of 3,500 calls per month during regular FSI business hours, and the average speed of answer would be no more than 15 minutes per month during regular business hours. And as was presented earlier, actually since this was in place, they haven't gotten 3,500 calls a month. In fact, the low is about 1,700, and that seems to be the sweet spot. When they're about at 1,700 calls, with the number of staff they're able to maintain, the number of calls answered is about 95%. But as the calls go up, the abandonment rate goes up. And, as was presented, we worked with them to come up with that 3,500 number. They said we can answer 3,500 calls a month. And they're not getting 3,500 calls a month, and they're not answering all the calls. So that metric has not been met, and so our concern remains. With respect to the staff turnover, as Mickey mentioned, they did bring on Rebecca Armourcost right about the time that the corrective action plan began. And we have seen significant improvement in their work with their staff related to the HR work. I know they didn't used to do exit interviews. They didn't do a number of things that were basic accepted best practices. They've now implemented, and they've made some improvements there. Nonetheless, the staff turnover rate is 30%, and the benchmark metric that we set, or that they set, was 19%. So we are still in looking for improvement.
Okay, if I can begin to wrap this up. And Mike, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I don't want to.
I don't know if I had a question, but I just wanted to make a couple of statements. I think this is really hard work, and I want people to recognize the difficulty in work that these folks do. Thank you for both presentations. I think the salary range that they're paying in the 30s is difficult in Pinellas County. As the largest employer in Pinellas County, I feel the things Mickey says in every aspect. We're the largest food service provider, we're the largest transporter, we're the largest, and I'm going to tell you what, it's really difficult out there right now. And anybody who's not living it isn't understanding it. So I don't want to make decisions or have the conversation so skewed around the difficulty of this present time, because it's real, and I certainly don't want to make the present time the reason why we do something. I've had pretty smart attorneys, by the way, go to some of those 3-story apartments, and I've gotten no results from them because they have absolutely no problems filling every one of their rooms at whatever rate they want. So the notion of putting a $35,000, $40,000 bus driver or teacher starting salary, they have absolutely no interest in, by the way. And that's an issue that I think as a community we need to address beyond this scope. So Beth, maybe what's the vision between Lourdes? What's the vision in, all right, we had 2 presentations. I sit here, and I don't know if we want to create this synergy between them or what, but I mean, retention rates and all this stuff, I'm going to put that aside for now, unless you are always having trouble with it. But what's the vision of the county? What's the vision of the Juvenile Welfare Board as the executive director to say, where are we going with this? There is a service. It's hard work. It is, and let's admit that up front. And it's not work that you just put a volunteer on the other end of the phone with and hope that they can, because you know what, you're going to create additional problems that you don't have now. So you need trained people, and the trained people you're paying $17 an hour or so forth. And there is fatigue in this work. It is. Trust me, we answer phones all day, and it gets tough. So I'd like to ask either both the county and our own executive director, what's our vision for this so we don't come to a stalemate and just, you know, have a conversation and go home?
Sure, thank you for that question. Thank you for that question, Dr. Greco. To me, the vision is that, again, you know, we've met on a number of occasions, Beth, myself, and Randy, to look at exactly what you just said. What is the vision? You know, how are we helping our residents? There are definitely, you know, problems, things that we can do better, right? And it's not all about the pandemic. So I certainly don't want to use that as an excuse. I just wanted to share, I think it's important to share the entire story of what's happened in the last 20 months or so. But could we do better? Could we be more modern to get people out to, you know, have one number where when they call in, there's a warm handoff. There's some type of assessment done for folks. They're provided the correct referrals. We know on the other end that the person went there, got what they needed. And, you know, it's not all about 211, right? Or whatever company we have. What's out there in the community needs to work also. And that's something that I've been doing this work for 35 years. It's constant improvement and tweaking and streamlining and thinking of the next best thing. And that's what we do every day. That's what we get paid for every day at work. So again, you know, Beth is a part of that. Randy has stepped up and is a part of that, and, you know, has hired a consultant to help us with this. And again, the first meeting was yesterday. So, you know, I thought it was a good meeting, lots of good information. And it's not going to be cheap. I'm here to tell you that it's not going to be $3.2 million.
What's your perceived timeline in terms of, I know your first meeting was yesterday, but where, 3 months from now, this spring, February, March, it would come back, the county's going to establish this maybe
Yeah, and-
collaborative task force that's going to come up with a recommendation for the county and juvenile welfare board?
And I just want to make it clear that why we're working on that, and I believe Randy said about 12 to 18 months. I'm hoping it's sooner. But we're also working on our coordinated access model, which at some point should intercept with this. We've been working on that already for quite a while, and we have a lot of community input. School board was one of them. The judiciary was another one. Juvenile welfare board was another one. Just about everyone you can think of, religious organizations, of what we could do better. That focuses more on behavioral health, but what we've learned there, and we've learned a lot, again, about needing a warm handoff. It's not just about a call center. You can have a beautiful call center that answers the phone within 3 seconds and gives a referral, but if out there in the real world it's not ready, then we didn't do anything except for add more money up front. So we're working on that. So the lessons we've been learning from that, again, the RFP just closed last night. You know, we're just putting it all together.
Lourdes, it's so good to see you outside of a hurricane or
Yeah.
a pandemic.
And
I think
COVID, right?
This is the first time we've ever talked where those two things weren't happening.
Thank you.
You do a great job. Thanks so much.
So that's I don't know, Beth, I don't
Yeah,
want to.
Beth?
Well, again, we've spent a great deal of time talking about a lot of things, and maybe that's part of the problem, is we're talking about a lot of things. And we're not going to be able to make a decision, we're not going to try to make a decision today as to what JWB's position will be or how we move forward. I do have a couple of my own comments, and I'd like to then close. Again, I thank you all for coming here and hearing the frustration amongst our board and making a presentation on the things that you're doing. I was happy to hear, you know, some of the comments that Randy made, but at the same time he left. And I wish he would have been here for what I'm going to say, because I think one of my biggest concerns in listening to what the plan is there and not knowing enough about it to be knowledgeable, it's important to ask who are the right people you're asking these questions to create what the need is and to identify what to develop. I'll speak from experience. I helped build a number of those call centers that were out there in my days at Accenture and my teams that were doing these things. And the first step you take is you go to the right people to understand what they really need. But you also got to be honest with yourselves and be able to say, this is not an improvement program. I can't just improve what I have, because what I have may not be the right thing I need to do, or I may not really be able to improve it. And I think, Lourdes, you said that is, it's not just the call center, it's the handoffs, it's where these things need to come together. And that's a big, big undertaking to try to create and grab all those things. So my personal recommendation, as from a consulting perspective or whatever, I would step back and say, hey, let me go really take a look at what do I really need to do? What can I do the best? How can I best handle the needs of the community once I know what they are? And spend the time to work on that. That may mean I don't do certain things anymore. It may mean that I outsource to somebody else to do those things, and I work on the core competence that we're capable in doing. Unless you do that, unless you really take that good hard look, I'm afraid we're not going to be here. I can guarantee you that we're not going to be here another 5 years having the same conversation. We need to see action. We need to see change. We need to address the issues and ensure that the taxpayers of this community are getting the value for what they're paying for. And that's clearly means everybody's got to get their act together and understand clearly what are the real needs, what's different than it was in the past. It's nice to know, but I don't necessarily worry about that. I'm really worried about what do I need right now? What do I need to help to support this? And what are the incremental components of that that will make it work? And until you do that, no metric's gonna really come out and answer the question. So that's my comment. Take us for what it's worth. Again, I thank you all for the time that you spent here
Mr.
today.
Chairman,
Yes.
before we move on from this topic and close it, I see Commissioner Seal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Has had her hand up, and I would like to hear from Beth, our own CEO, about this issue before we close this topic today.
Commissioner Seal?
I could spend quite a bit of time discussing this. It's been a passion of mine for many years. I was at the table when it changed from Family Resources and spun off. United Way at that time wanted this service, and I felt it needed to serve the entire county, not just United Way agencies. I think Dr. Grego kind of said it best. This is a tough, tough job, and you are serving a tough, tough population with not enough monetary resources. That's the bottom line. They came to the county in April, asked for additional money. I could really spill out my frustrations because we had a convening group last February who spoke about a new program or a good program that's out in San Diego, California called the Community Information Exchange. 211 responded, and they came up with a plan to implement something like this. It's technology. It's basically following kind of what the county's doing with the behavioral health, and I emphasize only behavioral health, with the coordinated access model, where you will get the warm handoff and you will get the services that you need. But we have to commit the resources to do this right. And if you think that we are going to fix it, then somebody's got to step up and help 211 to fix it, because they don't have the manpower, the resources, the time to do this. And it's especially during the pandemic and especially with staff turnover. And I wanted the county to take the lead on this, I'll be frank. And instead, Randy stepped up to the plate and said that their foundation would take the lead in getting it done. I am sitting on that working group, and I will push as hard as I can to get it done. But we have to commit, and Randy's right, it's going to take at least $6 million to do this right. And we have to work on affordable housing. The county's committed $80 million plus to trying to put more affordable housing in this community. But, I can go backwards. I've been here at this point way too long, probably. And I have way too much history with way too many organizations. And sometimes I think I just ought to quit and just go work and try to fix one problem at a time. But anyway, I'm done. But let's commit to, I really appreciate what the chair said, but we have to help. Mm-hmm. So we can't just sit there and go, oh, well, so this is the metrics, you're on corrective action. We have to step in and help. And that's the county too.
Beth?
Just to pick up on that point, certainly as we entered a period where we thought with COVID, some of the federal programs were going away or might go away permanently, and we would be back to local resourcing. JWB added 5 positions a little over a year ago, or about a year ago, to our contract with 211. And by and large, those positions have remained open. But I'd also point out every spring, not just during COVID, but we would talk to them about the competitive salary work that they did very appropriately, looking at the marketplace, what do we need to pay people? And we increased, as to who we're funding, we increased our budget along with that. So where there have been asks like that from 211 generally speaking, we've said yes. Does more need to be done and more dollars and higher vision? Probably. As a funder, I will tell you that until a year and a half ago or so, 211 just wasn't evaluated around here. It was, well, that's different. We don't look at it. And all of our evaluators and people who work in our contract management were kind of aggravated by that, frankly, that, we go through this whole process with every contract we have, with every agency that we fund, to look at outcomes and metrics. And this board has said so many times over the time I've been here, is it measurable? Do you know if you're doing a good job? How would you know? That you expect from me and staff that we are looking at metrics as we look at and making a difference with every contract, with every dollar that comes from the taxpayer. So I would say we've just been frustrated because we've done those things. We've done a number of things. We've really attempted to work, and the relationship's fine. That's not the issue. Mickey's not hard to work with, but we've tried to find paths to improvement within the performance improvement plan, within the corrective action plan. All of us would want it to be successful, so none of that is designed to be punitive. But I would say if it were any other agency we funded, we would be having a defunding conversation right now. I get that 211 is different in the sense that there's only one of them for the county. But it does leave us with, what is the next step for JWB? What more can we do to actually see those numbers and that service get better? Because we feel like our hands are sort of tied and we've done as much as we know to do. We can't run the agency. That's not our job. It wouldn't be appropriate anyway. So we're sort of at the end of our what we can do. So when the executive committee was meeting on another topic, and it just sort of organically the issues and the frustrations about 211 came up, I wanted to be clear that I can't fix it, and it's really up to 211 to fix it. And if part of the fix is to say we need to do, these kinds of funding of our people, we need to do, these kind of changes to our technology, whatever those are, if they're well thought out. We're not the funder for everything. We don't fit as a funder for everything, like a big capital ask, for instance. But there would be pieces we no doubt could do. And as I said, on the operating budget each year, we have, certainly as to getting salaries to a market level.
Okay, if I can, we've heard from every party at this point.
Wait a minute, I got a question.
We're going to run out of time and I may lose somebody in the way here. So that's why I'm concerned. So I've got a little, this is something we're going to have to bring up for another.
Perhaps we could do the action items, and then if the
wanna
remaining
come back
people
and do
wanted
it,
to
that's
continue
fine.
to discuss, we could do it that way, because we really do need at least 6 people here. We have 7 currently, so we need at least 6 for the action.
So how much more time do you need? Go ahead. I mean, I'm just,
Just go on.
Coming back is okay?
we can come back? Okay.
No, I just, 2 questions I had for Beth, but if you're not willing to allow me.
No, I'm not. I'm just watching our time so we can complete this time. But go ahead. You have it.
Okay, quicker if I just ask a question.
Do it.
Beth, how many volunteers do we have at JWB?
Really a small number, and right now, at our peak, probably 5, because we don't have much that.
All the neighborhood associations, and
Oh.
all those people that volunteer for us, how many do we have?
I don't know what that count would be. But
Okay,
if you looked at all of our agencies,
Say 200?
at all of our agencies,
Yeah, and all the neighborhoods and all those boards.
yeah, I'm sure it could well be 200.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering, could we exist without those people?
Well, certainly the programs, many of them could not exist
Okay.
without those people.
Great, thanks.
That's
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, this subject is not going away. We have to have, in our future meetings, we need to come back. We can talk later on as well. But let's move on. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. And again, you hear our frustration. You know where we're at and the difficult decisions we're going to have to make, but we're here to help. And I think we're here to work with the team to create whatever solutions need to be. But I think you really have to take a good hard look at what they are. Okay? Thank you again. Let's move on to the action items. Approve the proposed Evergreen Solution recommendations. Linda?
Good morning. Linda Leedy, Chief Administrative Officer of the Juvenile Welfare Board. Earlier this year, JWB issued an RFQ to identify a firm to conduct a thorough compensation and classification study. This is the first time since 2008 that we've endeavored to do such a comprehensive look at all of our positions at the same time. In recent years, we have been using HR consultants to look at individual positions when we were having a difficult time recruiting, but not looking at all of them at once. Evergreen Solution was the firm that we selected because this is what Evergreen Solutions does, compensation and classification studies. They are a public sector management consulting firm located in Tallahassee and have clients in 46 states. In the state of Florida alone, they have done 250 compensation and/or classification studies for local governments, other public sector organizations, including special districts. JWB has worked closely with Evergreen and their senior consultant, Angel Yazbek, this year, and she will be presenting Evergreen's process, findings, and recommendations. And once Angel is finished, then I'll come back up and address some specific concerns you may have. Dr. Angel Yazbek is a senior consultant with Evergreen, and she's been with the firm for 3 years. She has a PhD in cognitive psychology from Florida State University and has a strong background in quantitative and qualitative analysis. Her expertise is in conducting market research and collecting compensation data, running regression analyses, and recommending appropriate pay grades. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Angel to make her presentation and answer any questions on that specifically, and then I'll come back and address a few other things.
All right, thank you, Linda. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. All right, thank you all for inviting me this morning. I would like to walk you through our findings and recommendations from the compensation and classification study that we conducted for the JWB. Just to give you an overview of the agenda, I'm going to go over at a high level the study process, as well as our findings from employee outreach, through which we interacted with all the employees at the JWB, as well as go through our findings of something called current conditions, which I'll go into more detail in a little bit. I will also show the board's compensation philosophy, JWB's compensation philosophy, that is, the results of our classification review, the results of our compensation review, unveiled a new pay plan, and then also discuss the proposed implementation and cost estimate associated with it. So in terms of the completed tasks, we did conduct the employee outreach earlier this year, where we had one-on-one interviews with the chiefs of the organization. We also invited employees to respond to those same questions via SurveyMonkey. We assessed the conditions of the current pay system, in which we looked to see within the assigned pay ranges for employees, where were their salaries within that range. We reviewed the JWB's compensation philosophy. And then we also conducted an external equity analysis by surveying the market to determine what are competitive salary ranges for the positions, as well as benefits offerings. Based on those findings, we revised a pay plan to be more competitive with the market. We also individually assigned each classification or job title to a pay grade or range within the new pay plan. We then developed optional methods for implementing the revised pay plan and pay ranges, and we have prepared a draft report. We do have a couple of remaining items. One is to actually finalize the report, as well as provide a training in study methodology to the human resources team. So that way, in between compensation studies, if there are new positions that come up in the future, reclassifications, they'll be able to add those classifications into the pay plan. And we will also be preparing and providing revised job descriptions. When we conducted the employee outreach, we received the following feedback from the employees. On the whole, they really enjoyed serving the local community, donating their time and talents to the community, and working with a professional organization that was so geared towards serving the community. And they enjoyed the positive work environment that was fostered at JWB. So with that, there were some general concerns that the salaries were not keeping up with the cost of housing and living in the area, and were not generally market competitive with the local area. Many employees also believed that there was not room for advancement within their careers. And there was some concern that the job descriptions do not entirely reflect the actual tasks and duties that employees perform. So for our current conditions assessment, we reviewed the type of pay plan that the JWB administered, which is an open range pay plan, meaning that there is an established minimum, midpoint, and maximum, but salaries are free to fall anywhere between that minimum and the maximum. There's flexibility with that. There are 19 pay grades, and the range spreads, meaning that difference between the minimum and the maximum, varied from 56 to 62%. So we did a quartile analysis to see where salaries were placed along those pay ranges. So if you take a look at that, you can kind of visualize it as a bell curve, with a lot of the salaries being that second and third quartile and fewer being the first and fourth quartiles. So that indicates that there's a good distribution of salaries, but of course, we still need to ascertain if those salary ranges are market competitive, which is where the next part of our study comes into play. So we reviewed the JWB's compensation philosophy. The JWB would like to be competitive with the market. They would like to have equitable and flexible pay practices moving forward. And certainly retaining an open range design would allow for the flexibility in those pay practices. And in terms of increasing pay moving forward, they would like to have continuous review to ensure that salaries remain competitive, as well as recognize and reward experience and employee contributions. As part of our classification review, we actually asked employees to describe to us what were their duties and responsibilities through something called a job assessment tool, or JAT. I use those terms pretty interchangeably. So on that job assessment tool, employees were asked to provide an overview of their position, as well as give a breakdown of their essential duties, responsibilities, tasks, and they also indicated approximately what % of their time is allocated to each of those essential functions. And then we also had their supervisors review that feedback, so that way we had a holistic idea of what employees do in their role at the JWB. After collecting that data, we utilized a compensable factor scoring methodology to determine the classification hierarchy or internal hierarchy within the system. And we made appropriate changes to job titles as was needed. We also conducted a salary survey and collected salary range data from the 10 public sector peers that are listed on the screen there, but I'll also read it out loud. Those peers included the City of Clearwater, City of Largo, City of St. Petersburg, Pinellas County, Children's Services Council of Broward County, Children's Services Council of Palm Beach County, Children's Trust of Miami-Dade County, Children's Board of Hillsborough County, St. Petersburg College, United Way Suncoast, and University of South Florida. Sorry, not St. Petersburg College, even I had issues reading that, but United Way Suncoast and University of South Florida. So these were the peers from whom we've obtained salary range data from. So you may be looking at those and you might see, some counties pop out at you, such as Broward, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade. We did adjust all of the data for cost of living using the national cost of living indices that we have access to. And so we collected information for 28 classifications that were in the survey, representing a cross-section of the positions across the JWB, and the average number of matches for each of those positions was 4.2. So not all peers have matches for all of these classifications, because some of them are a little bit more unique, some serve slightly different functions. So we made sure that as we were reviewing those market data, that there was a match with whatever the peer was providing with what the JWB has. So up there, you see the results of our market comparison. So this represents, across the board, how do the ranges at the JWB currently compare with the market peers that I described, adjusted for cost of living. So we see that, based on those negative differentials, the JWB is behind the market. These are some differentials that we have been seeing among our other clients as of late. We do see that the market is kind of jumping exponentially. We saw this even before the pandemic, starting in 2019. The labor market was really starting to take off in terms of salary compensation. And then ever since 2020 has passed, a lot of employers have been very interested in attracting more talent in the labor market. You know, anywhere from entry level through your professional, all the way up to your executive level positions, all of those levels are highly competitive right now. So that's part of the reason that we do see those comparisons with the market. So as I mentioned before, we also took a look at benefits because salary is one piece of the puzzle, but benefits are also important. So those 7 peers that you see in that chart are the peers that we have benefits data from. So overall, the JWB does have a good benefits package. That was another piece of feedback that we got from employees. It was described as a terrific benefits package. So overall, medical, dental, vision premiums were pretty competitive. The medical deductibles were competitive. The maximum annual vacation leave accrual rates were a potential room for improvement. However, I do want to highlight that taking only 10 years of service to reach that maximum accrual rate should be seen as a competitive feature. Many other organizations, on average, it took 17.5 years to reach that maximum rate. So now, taking all those findings into consideration, we have a proposed pay plan for the JWB. So it's still that open range structure like I described before, having that minimum, midpoint, and maximum, 20 pay grades, and range spreads of 65%. So we did increase those a little bit. We found that in the market, those range spreads were more around that 65% mark, so there's going to be more room for growth within a given pay range. And then we individually placed each position at the JWB based on the findings from our job assessment tool analysis, as well as the market data to fit them into this plan. So now I'm going to describe the proposed implementation that we have provided to the JWB. This method is called range penetration capped at midpoint. So to put it more simply, we perform calculations to determine the percentage at which an employee's salary is in the range currently. And then we utilize that percentage to place the employees at the same percentage in the proposed range, but we cap the adjustments at midpoint. So that way there's still room for them to grow. So the idea is that the employee salaries that are above the proposed midpoints will not be affected. And we also applied an additional cap such that no adjustment would exceed 15%. So up there you see the estimated annualized cost, which includes salary plus taxes of $360,280 and would impact 49 employees, which is a good amount of the workforce. And these adjustments are proposed to be implemented at the end of the year, December 31st, and will be retroactive for October 1st. That concludes my presentation. I will go ahead and take any questions at this time.
I have quite a few, and I had the opportunity to, with the Miami-Dade and the Palm Beach, how much percentage did you adjust that by? I mean, when we do counties, administrator and county attorney, we look at it, but we go, they're outliers. They make way more money.
Yeah, so I can't tell you off the top of my head what that percentage adjustment was, but we did use the most recent cost of living adjustment factor to adjust those salaries downward to be more reflective of the comparisons.
But I would think that the Hillsborough Children's Board is in our area and would probably be more applicable. Did you do a side-by-side with them?
So we worked with the peer list that was approved by the JWB.
I'd like to see that side-by-side data, please, when you get a chance. I value our employees greatly, and so I will support this, but I also would recommend that we, in the future, have the executive committee or the finance committee review this, because this is a big impact financially, and I think to the taxpayers, they would be shocked at the amount of increase that we are proposing. I also will make the comment that other agencies funded by JWB are struggling to look at the $15 minimum wage in the future. They're also struggling to retain employees, as we heard earlier today. It's something that we're going to have to look at for our other agencies as well. This is not unfair for us to support our group, but we also have to look at across the board. Anyway, I could say a lot more, but I'm not going to. Time is short.
Other comments?
Mike, is there a sense of urgency on this? I know we have that structure of executive board that I'm not a part of, so I get a lot of this stuff like before the board meeting, and maybe others have more to digest, but I agree with the commissioner. And I just don't know whether there's some sense of urgency that this has to be approved today, or we have a further discussion on it. $300 and some odd thousand is a lot. So if I will support it, I'm not opposed to it, but I would echo her comments.
I think, this board can decide to do whatever it would like and could push it off. There is, this has been a months-long process, and we are at a point where to implement it, I would hate to see us push it off. I guess I will just put it that way. I think that, because we're an open book, our employees are well aware that this is in process. To Commissioner Seal's point, if we had a personnel committee, and we can create that by using the finance committee in the future, that might have had a better opportunity for the board to give input before it came to this point. And I apologize for that. But we are, what I would say is we are where we are, and Linda, having talked to many of you, and I've talked to many of you, my overall sense in those discussions was that the board is comfortable with these increases. It is a lot, but I would point out before we brought it to you, we, in concert with Evergreen, worked on a few different ways to limit that cost to keep it within a range that, one, was within our budget, and two, kept integrity but did not increase it at a much higher level. I think to the degree we don't do that, we're going to be looking in a year and have to play more catch up. So I would urge the board to take it as an action today. And I say that with a real comfort that I think the more time anybody spent with it, that I think because of the incredible quality of the work that was done by Evergreen, that there would actually be a growing comfort with the process, not the other way around.
And if I could just add, I did have the opportunity to hear the presentation from Evergreen prior to this meeting. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, the funds that we're talking about were already in the budget. Am I wrong? Were they already in the budget, please, just to make sure?
Yes. Correct,
Okay.
correct. We have adequate funds in the budget to,
So it's a net, there's no additional funds required to do this. Luckily enough, or thankfully enough, the staff were able to negotiate a much better rate on the insurances that were also part of this, so that allowed this additional funding to be made available to cover this. I think the recommendation of having the Finance Committee in the future participate in these is one well-deserved to really provide their input and impact on it. But I would ask that we move forward. I think the staff, we have December 31 with retroactive. For us to push this off could be an issue to some extent for some. So with that said, do I have a motion to approve? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Did we give cost of living increases October 1st?
Yes. And
Shouldn't we adjust this accordingly?
Well, we get, these adjustments take into account those. So we didn't, our starting number wasn't pre-October 1st number. It took into account the October 1st.
Right. Okay. So once again, I'll ask, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, it's approved. We're still running out of time. Mike, can we still, with Mike leaving?
With Dr. Grego leaving, we have 6. I know Ms. Malo also needs to leave, but I also do know that if we could get through item B, I believe we could put C and D
On
for
it.
January. Would that be okay, Linda? Okay.
Okay, let's do that then.
But B needs to hopefully get done.
Okay.
And should be quick.
Good morning, Karen Boges, Chief Program Officer, and I'm here this morning for staff are recommending the release, the approval for the release of Respite Services RFP. I was here back in October with the entire, talking about the modalities, talking about the target population. Not much has changed since I came in October. We did speak with and work with DCF as well as Pinellas County Licensing Board to include those requirements for any of the modalities that would apply to. And the total for this is $2.65 million. Again, we're looking at strengthening the family unit, keeping children out of the child welfare system, and really providing additional supports to families. Included in this is clinical oversight, assessment, as well as ongoing family support. I tried to keep that really brief. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Motion to approve?
Second, and very well done.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, that's been approved. Still got another minute?
Okay, you do one more.
Okay, let's do one more. Which one? Beth's been
Personnel.
waiting for a while. Let's do personnel.
We can do C, January.
Yeah, let's, if that makes sense, or do you want to move?
Let's do C.
Okay, we'll do C then. Move on to the proposed personnel policy for revision.
And she's running.
Hopefully,
Mr.
this is
Chairman,
non-controversial.
I move to
We have
approve.
reviewed our JWB personnel policies,
read this.
and we are recommending,
If I already have a motion to approve,
Oh.
because I think it's that good, okay, yes.
Question, which I talked to Beth about this. I have mixed emotions about this because I do, believe we and families and parentally, but it's not something that the board directed us to do, directed the executive director to do. So I just kind of want to make note of that. And I don't see, again, that this went through any kind of personnel committee, any kind of finance committee or executive committee review, and I think that's lacking. And so I will support it because I do think it's the right thing to do, but I don't like the process.
I would agree, and I also had a conversation with Beth that I will support it, but the issue of employees working at home, we have no debate that our employees are very accountable. Everybody's working hard. But I have been approached. I think there's the court of public opinion as well regarding this issue. Many other nonprofits, many other governments are back at work and figuring out safety issues. So again, have this conversation with Beth. I will support this, but I will not support it forever. And I believe it is something that this board, aside from staff, need to be aware of that public perception public opinion. Having said that, I understand that the work that we do is different than other human social services in government. I understand, and the work can be done at home, but should it? And that's the question that I brought up and I will continue to bring up. But again, I will vote for this because management has asked for that. But I just wanted to make that point.
So if it would be beneficial then to approve this, but let's modify the recommendation to have another review done within the year?
Well, we don't even know what the financial impact is of the paternal.
Okay. So
The leave,
my
the
question is
family
whether
leave.
we,
I mean,
is it
it's
a
not
year?
in
Is
the-
it 6 months from now? When do we want to do this review? Because I'm going to then ask for at our next board meeting to
Well, the
have.
telework, I think you could probably review, but once you put the parental leave policy in
Then
place, that's done.
that's a tough one. Okay. I'd still like to see, I think would make sense to come back and review it. Again, the parental, I'm not sure what we do there, but we do need to establish a subcommittee or the finance committee to participate in these subjects. So I'd like to have that put on the agenda for next meeting. Okay, so I have a motion to approve and a second. By Mr. Butler. I'm looking for a second. Do we want to make that modification as far as time frame,
I'll second the motion.
with or without the modification? For timing
With the
for review?
modification, please. With the modification, please.
Yeah, let's modify it for 9 months. Just make it curative.
For clarification of the minutes, are you asking for a re-review of the policies in 9 months, or are you asking
Yes.
for?
Okay, so I have a motion to approve with a re-review in 9 months. I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, it's approved. All right. The final one will be moved then, your goals and objectives will be moved to the next meeting.
Okay, I'll keep working on them
Okay.
anyway.
All right. And Beth, by the way, happy holidays to those that are leaving. Okay. Chief Executive Report, if you have one.
I think we've run out of time, and I did a mid-month report that covered kind of some highlight issues regarding child welfare systems.
Okay. All right. Then we have the informational items everyone has, if there's any questions or comments. Seeing none. An open agenda. Is there any more questions, comments on any of the things we have? Have you gotten any cards? No cards? Okay. And with that, I don't see any anniversaries, so the future board meetings are on the agenda, and having nothing else for the meeting, I'll adjourn it, and again, happy holidays to everyone.
Oh, Jesus.